Right, so I think we should kick off. We're right on time, so let's go. So the first thing is Happy New Year to everybody. Welcome to the first meeting of the year, and looking forward to it. And tonight we've got a speaker, which is rather excellent. Our first speaker since lockdown, I think, started. So the agenda tonight, we're going to go with our speaker first of all, and then we're going to take some questions and answers around that, and then move on to the business for the rest of the meeting. That's going to be the order in which we go to. So I'd like to welcome Penny, who's on my screen there somewhere, top right hand side, who is going to tell us all about the importance of censuses and what they mean, why they're important, and why we do them. And interestingly, we discovered today that we have a shared history in international travel in looking after various bits of the oil industry, which we have both since left, and discovered that having been right around the world, the best place in the world is exactly where we are right now. So, so Penny, I'm going to hand it over to you, and
Wonderful, thank you very much. Firstly, can I just say thank you to Gareth and thank you to Mitch for making the introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here. My role is working for ONS, which is the Office for National Statistics, and I'm working on the census, which is due to be held on the 21st of March this year. I do have a short presentation. If I can just share this screen. And then if anybody could just confirm if they've actually got that on. Has anybody got the presentation on yet?
No.
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 All right, let me try again. Wonders of technology.
It says you've started screen sharing now. So, oh yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're good, great. That's the first hurdle overcome for that. So yes, so the census will be happening on the 21st of March 2021. If I can. So I will talk through some of it, most of which many of you will be aware of, but I'm aware that every now and again there are some people that don't quite know. Please, I apologise if you know some of this, but I will skip through it relatively quickly and hopefully get to the good bits, so to speak. So the census itself happens every 10 years, and ONS run the census for England and Wales. Scotland and Northern Ireland do hold a census every 10 years, but they carry out theirs independently. And the census is particularly important because it gives us national government, local organisations, huge amount of detail about the society in general and the makeup of it. A little bit about census history. So the first modern UK census was just over 200 years ago in 1801. It certainly wasn't the same as what we have now. It was more name, address, ages, and a little bit maybe on occupations. The first thorough survey was actually in the UK, was actually the Domesday Book. And as it states there, was an inventory of land and property. A much bigger task than we have now, especially in this day and age of digital technology. And then just a little bit of information that the last census in 2011, we managed to capture 94% of people in England and Wales, which is fantastic. And the population at that point was 56,075,912. And then locally in Brighton and Hove, that gave us a population of 273,369. And some of the work I've been doing is looking over the population of Brighton and Hove over the last the last few censuses, and it seems to be growing at a rate of about 20 to 30,000 a time. It gets a little bit tricky pre-amalgamation of the councils. So a little bit about the census itself and what I think is very important for some people. We make sure that any information collected is, any personal information I should say, is anonymous for 100 years. And after those 100 years, all the information comes out, and that's what we have in ancestry.co.uk, and for all those people that like to look at their family histories. Prior to that, it's much more generic, and there is no way that any one person can be identified through their information. So we look at population, age ranges, gender breakdowns, addresses, etc. And also, an important thing, but not something we do like to dwell on, is it is a legal obligation to complete. We hope that most people will complete anyway, but it is actually a legal obligation, and there is a team that sometimes we do have to enforce, and it can go to court and people can get a criminal record for not completing. So why do we have a census? As I mentioned earlier on in the presentation, its main use is for local and national government, and that's to help them shape the policy, look at the resources required, plan services and monitor equality. And part of my role is why I think it's really important that we get the right figures for our local area. We need to make sure that all people are counted, and therefore we can, hopefully the local authority will therefore provide the facilities and services that those people need. As mentioned, it's really quite important to get that information. I'm working quite closely with the local authority to get the information for them to plan for the next 10, 20, 30 years. That will also inform health and social care provision and housing. Education, so looking at our more schools required in the future, any transport requirements, and then other things such as waste disposal, libraries, etc. And then the key part of my role is working with the local communities to spread the news really about the census. I liken it into, there's three strands really to my role. One is to raise awareness. The second, which I think is quite important for some communities, is to debunk myths. So to explain that the information doesn't go anywhere. It can't go to the police, it can't go to the Home Office. No other government departments can access personal information for 100 years. And then ultimately, obviously, my main goal is to get completion up, and that 94% figure will be fantastic if we can get closer to the 97, 98%, and it would be wonderful to get 100, but we'll see. But really why I come to groups like yours is to say, you know the community, and I live, I mentioned to Gareth earlier, just over the border, just into West Sussex. So I'm not a North Lane resident, I'm not a Brighton and Hove resident. And whilst I know the area relatively well, trying to get the word out and raise awareness amongst communities is important by hopefully coming to groups like yours and really asking you wonderful people to try and spread the word for us. And also, if you have ideas of places that I can go with posters and leaflets, I appreciate things are very difficult at the moment in these COVID times. But if I have digital engagement literature that I can send out. So if anybody has any ideas of places that I can get that information to, it really would be greatly appreciated. And we'll also assist. So if anybody has queries, I have support available for communities, for individuals, to help them with the census. So as I said, the census is actually on the 21st of March. And this time, for the first time, it is known as a digital first census. So that means we will be asking the majority of people to complete online if they can. That doesn't mean that paper isn't available. Every household in England and Wales will receive a letter, and on that letter will be a unique access code which people can then use to go online and complete. What I will say for the online system is, rather than the paper forms where you get to maybe question number 20 and then it says if such and such is relevant, go to question 36, the online system will automatically do that for you. So it should, in theory, be much quicker and easier than doing the paper format. But as I said, the paper format will be available for anybody who requests it. As I mentioned, my role is engaging with groups and trying to let people know what the census is, what it's all about, how they can complete it. And there is help available. We have a language line with 49 languages covered. We are hoping to have census support centres around the city. Clearly, we have to wait and see what happens with the current lockdown before they can open. But fingers crossed, we will have those available as well. And really, there's help there for people should they need it. And we can't do it without everybody taking a part, really, and playing a role. It really is important. My discussions with the local authority, and they are stressing to me the importance of them getting accurate figures for their communities. And then, yeah, your local knowledge is great. So as I said earlier, if you have anything that we can utilise, the article in the Runner is fantastic. But if there are areas I can put up posters on notice boards, etc., anything like that, or other people, community leaders you think would be worth speaking to, please let me know. A little bit of information. I was having a look at some old census data. So in 2011, just over 2,500 babies were born on that day in England and Wales. And then in St Peter's and North Lane ward, there were just over 18,000 people living there, of which the average age was 32.7 years. Slightly higher percentage of male residents. 213 people held passports of countries in Oceania or Antarctica. I thought this was quite an interesting statistic. Certainly as a non-resident, of 8,609 households, over 5,000 had no car or van, which I think is phenomenal. But then on the other side, much smaller number, but 27 had 4 or more cars or vans. And then a really interesting fact, 10 people within the ward recorded their national identity as Cornish only. So not Cornish English, not Cornish/British, but Cornish only. And that's really my presentation. I am certainly happy to try and answer any questions. If I can't, I will take them away and try and come back to you with answers. But thank you very much for your time. And I'm going to stop the sharing so you can actually see my face. Right, hopefully that's finished.
Yeah, you're back online, Penny. That was wonderful. Thank you for that introduction, and fascinating. 2,500 babies, was it?
Yes, yeah.
Rather good planning. So if you're planning on having a baby, it's a bit too late to start now. I think.
Well, this year will be interesting with lockdown.
Yeah, that will be, and I'm not surprised by the number of residents without a car, because if you've tried to get parking around the North Lane, you'll know why everyone's got rid of their cars. It's not because we're greedy; we're just fed up.
Oh, it's great to see, though. I have to say that figure.
So what do you think was the most surprising thing that's come out to you? You've done this is the second time you've done this now. So so you must be following the results of the census much more keenly than everybody else. What's the most surprising thing that that's tweaked your interest in the last 10 years?
Oh, good question. You didn't prep me for this one, Gareth. I don't know. I think it's always interesting, the population growth in certain areas, and what I would say, not necessarily over this last 10 years, but obviously in this job we've been getting lots of interesting facts and figures, and things like the number of glass eye makers in 1821. I think there were about 13, and just little things like that.
So it hasn't changed much then. It hasn't changed much then.
Probably not. And I can't remember the exact census year, but there was a time when I think it was 3 households put their dogs down with occupations of, they didn't all have the same wording, but essentially they were security for the houses.
But they were probably claiming tax relief, I would imagine. So I'll open it up for some questions, but there were a couple of comments that came in. I don't know, you probably didn't see them, but there were.
I didn't, I'm afraid.
There were a couple of comments, and there were some interesting observations, both from Judy and Mitch, I think. So we'll open up for questions, but why don't I send it over to Mitch? Because I only saw it flash up. Mitch, what was your comment? And then over to Judy, and then we'll open up.
I'm always fascinated by the fact, and it'll be out. This is now due for release. Emily Davidson famously hid in a cupboard in the House of Commons so that she could be enumerated as in Westminster for the 1911 census. I mean, it'd be interesting to read that. They are fascinating documents. But I have to say, the less personalised version might not be quite as interesting as the ones I've read, the 1901 particularly.
Yes. Yeah, they really are. And it's one of those, you have to, the devil's in the detail, but when those little facts and figures come out, they really are some interesting things in there.
Had one as well from even earlier.
Yeah, my one is 1841. Turner, the artist, rowed a boat out into the Thames, so he couldn't be counted as present in any property in that year's census. And that was a quiz question on a quiz I did, and I just thought that was hilarious. Imagine this man rowing frantically into the middle of the Thames and just sitting there.
I think it counts as a ship at sea, because they did take the census on prisoners in prison ships at sea, and
but he was in a little rowing boat.
Yeah, I've heard discussions this time, because obviously these are strange times, and the census, as they say, is always just a snapshot in time. But there have been discussions, because we have cruise ships and things moored off our coastlines because of current COVID guidelines, and that I'm not privy to all the information, but I know it has been raised about how we're going to enumerate those people. Interesting.
I was quite surprised that
Go on, Francis.
I'm surprised that what did you say? The captured number was 94%, which means 6% were not. Obviously, one expects that there will be some missed, but how were they mainly missed? Do you know? And I have another question after that.
If I'm perfectly honest, I don't.
Yes.
Sorry.
I don't. Sorry, I've got Lizzie
sorry.
on here, and she needs readmitting because her internet cut out or something.
Well, I'm not host anymore, so I can't get.
Okay.
Can you do it, Penny? Can you see the?
How can I change
You can
that?
take back hosting, Kathy.
Hmm?
You can take back hosting if
All
you
right.
look down participants.
Right.
I'm Penny, and then just reclaim it.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Who was it fell
You've
out?
got
Or was
that.
it
It's
Lizzie?
Lizzie Dean. She just phoned me because she lost her internet or something. and
Well,
so
what's Kathy's working on that?
Apologies.
Back to the 6%.
Yes, apologies for that. I don't have all the detail. I do know that even when people are requested to appear in court, and even when people appear at court, they are still given the option before sentencing where they can actually complete their information.
Right. Yeah.
Some do, not all,
Yeah.
because for some people it is a choice.
The other question I had was about the 1939 census, which was a special one, wasn't it? Which was done because the war was coming, I think. That is, it seems to contradict the 100-year rule, because that's available already.
I know that's not an official census under the normal jurisdiction, because we are told that there between 1931 and 1951 there is no official census.
Ah, right, okay.
So I'm guessing that was a sort of a record done to give some information without falling under the Census Act.
Right. Yeah.
So there will be missing.
No,
gaps.
I can't. I clicked on Penny, but I can't work out how to.
Right. Is it for North Lane Community Association?
Yeah. Click on participants and click on North Lane Community Association. Make them host. Oh, hold on. We're back. We're back. Yeah. Okay. Yep. We've got Lucy Jean and Justin Spray.
Okay.
I think it's
there we go.
There we go.
Hi, Lucy. You back?
Hi, thanks for letting me back in. I don't know what happened there. I'm going to turn my camera off because I think that might help to preserve power and allow me to stay in. But I am here and I am listening.
And we know what you look like.
Hi, Justin. Welcome aboard. And sorry, you must have been in the waiting room a while there. We had a speaker on the slides.
Oh, I saw. No, I did get all of Penny's presentation, which was fantastic. It was only afterwards that it cut out. So anything that happened afterwards, I'm afraid I've missed.
Thanks, Lizzie. And Justin, welcome aboard. We're questions about the census. That's where we are.
Oh, okay, great.
Sorry to keep you waiting. Justin.
Right. Okay. So
that's right. No one.
Lizzie, it's not to you.
Right. So asking questions, I think the easiest way to do this is put your hand up. Chris, you got your hand up first. On you go, Chris.
Okay. It's a question for you is on are houses counted as residents? In other words, how many houses have been turned since the last census into Airbnbs? How many houses have we lost in the area?
I don't think there is a question, because I'm just trying to think through the questions for this time. There isn't one that specifically, because Airbnbs would still be classed as a residence, because they're not, they wouldn't necessarily be classed as a business. They won't have changed them to business use.
So even though there's no long-term residents, they won't be classed. So you can't tell the addresses without long-term residents.
The census itself asks for your name and address. It asks for anybody who has been in the UK for 3 months or more, or will be in the UK for 3 months or more. And there is a separate category for visitors who may visit your residence for a shorter period.
I was just wondering if there was a way of being able to tell how many properties we've actually lost to Airbnb or short-term letting in the area in Brighton, or even in the local area since the last census, because around here it's been lost to that, and this would be a very good way of actually finding out the exact figure.
Yeah, I think it means this is all dependent on the person who completes, which should be the householder. Obviously we will get figures for people who are in HMOs, because they will have a lot of people living in maybe a 4-bed house. But actual houses that are used for businesses, there isn't a category as such that would capture that. So I don't think we would be able to capture that, I'm afraid.
Right, thank you.
It might be worth feeding that back, actually, as for consideration later on. I think it's an interesting piece.
Yeah.
It would be good to get. All right, any more questions? Hands up, and I'll. Oh, Kevin, I can see your hand there. But I can't hear you, what you're saying, Kevin.
Hear me?
Yeah, now we can. You need to speak up.
Hi. I've got a slightly nerdy mathematician's question following on from Francis's first question, which is 94%. How on earth do we know? How do we know which people
that's what I was going to ask.
or how many people did not complete it? I also have a follow-up offer of help with leaflets and a poster.
Good question. Part of my role is trying to capture those people that we wouldn't necessarily get the information for. So one of the groups I'm working with is refugees and migrants, and trying to capture those in for the census, which I'm sure you can all appreciate. They are not necessarily all as willing as some people to complete for various reasons. So it's a good question. You've stumped me, Kevin. But I tell you what, it's one I'm going to take back to my team and say, okay, please can somebody give me an answer to this. And once I have one, if you want me to come back to you, I'm more than willing.
Thank you. The offer of help is I've got a second-hand bookshop, and during lockdown I put out books for charity, and alongside it I can put out leaflets, and I can happily put up a poster in the window as well, if that will help.
That would be wonderful, Kevin. Do you have an email address that I'd be able to get hold of, or an address?
Yeah, we can send that. I'll send it to you, Penny. That's fine.
Perfect. Thank you. That's great.
A slight follow on, Kim, I've run out of runners. If you still have some spare runners, I can do that as well.
I will.
Okay.
Perfect. Any more questions? I see Mitch with a hand up. Go on, Mitch.
Just
then Ninka after that.
Really thinking about those who might find digital a bit of a struggle. We know that we have pockets of people like that living in managed or sheltered accommodation in the area, not right in the North Lane. Although Theobald House would be a good place for a leaflet drop when I'm thinking of it. But will you make some provision for the residents, say, of Bread Street, where they're unlikely to respond to a request to complete something digitally? They're not all likely to complete something digitally. I mean, there are people who are perfectly comfortable, but it would be nice to have a separate arrangement for those in our area and people living in like Homeleys or other similar things in the city.
Yes. So whilst we are hoping that the majority complete online, there are a percentage of addresses where we know there are more elderly people, and they will automatically get a paper copy straight away. The letters themselves that come with the access code will also have it. If you would like a paper copy, please call this number.
That's destined to fail, really, but the other arrangement is brilliant.
Yeah, we will, for things such as sheltered housing and care homes, etc. We have what we call a communal establishments team, and they will go out and do those separately. So they will go and liaise with managers of sheltered housing and care homes, and also same for some student halls of residence, to make sure we capture some information from those. So they're dealt with slightly different than a regular household.
Penny, we'll go Ninka, then Julia, and then Kim. That's the order that I saw your hands. Ninka, do you want to go next?
Yeah, just in relation to the last answer. I'd like to know what has happened to the role of the census enumerator who went from house to house in the past. I mean, did the role gradually decline as people got to know the system and became more literate, or what?
Historically, I don't have the answer, I'm afraid. What I do know is in the last census, I myself was a field officer. So I was one of the people, for those people that hadn't completed, that went round knocking door to door to assist with completion. So I guess in some ways that's kind of is similar to that role, although it's not for the whole population, it's just for those that didn't complete the paper questionnaires when they came through the post. I don't know if that answers your question at all.
Yeah, that definitely does. I think it's just that it presumably became sort of gradually more redundant. But thanks a lot.
No, you're very welcome.
Okay, over to Judy.
Can I just ask you how you're going to get information for the homeless and the people who prefer to live on the streets?
Mm-hmm.
Which we have in my area. I'm on the edge.
There will be, so I mentioned about our communal establishments team. We also will have a team of field officers that over census weekend, which is over the 20th and 21st, they will visit homeless shelters to enumerate the people that are within those shelters.
But what about the ones in the doorways that don't go to the shelters?
They will not be counted, I'm afraid. I can't give you a different answer to that. It was something I had literally myself and my team had training on that last week. So we are working with the local authority to make shelters and places aware of that, to try and ensure they have as many people visiting over that weekend as possible.
But doesn't that then skew, if you're telling me that this is with policy in mind, that kind of skews things so far as social care is concerned and certain aspects of dealing with these people?
Yes.
Out people.
The census itself is based around residences and where people reside, and that's really the situation we're at. They don't go out counting people that aren't residing anywhere over those dates, unfortunately.
Okay.
Part of the reason I'm told is so there's no double counting.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I can't give you an answer to that, I'm afraid.
Under the same category as a rowboat, I guess, Judy.
Yeah.
Kim, you had a question.
Yeah. Judy, the census takes place for Sunday, March the 21st.
Mm-hmm.
How long do you have to complete it? And is there? I was going to suggest that of the 94% that did say that they that we do have a figure for, the 6% were the people who just didn't fill in any forms that were sent out.
Yes, sorry, the first part of your question I missed.
Well, it's really about the leeway. It actually applies to Sunday the 21st of March, but do people have a longer period to reply? Yes,
so the forms will come out, the letters will come out in March. People can complete from then online with their best estimate of where they will be on the 1st of March. They can, after the fact, go back and change any answers if they need to. So they can do it in advance when they get the letter to make sure they don't forget. They then have, it's a little bit of they have until the end of April before people are likely to come knocking at the door, so to speak. But there are scheduled dates for reminder letters to come out to people. There are second and third reminders, and then field officers will come and very politely inquire if they would like to complete a census form, and that can take place up to sort of May, June time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So any more questions? Ruth, is that a hand up?
No.
Right.